Okay, apparently whatever little troll was in the machine is gone. Like I said on the last video, I plan to come here again and just get some administrative stuff done quickly. I plan to come here and voice my opinion on mental health issues for the sole purpose of helping people deal with their challenges in life. Sometimes technology isn't going to cooperate. Case in point, yesterday I had to cut it off after 4 minutes. This may actually freeze up and I'll have to go back at it again. One of the reasons I don't like doing this is it's just the commotion. It's like there's some kind of invisible force, even though I say there is no invisible force. And there isn't. It's just technology, just humanity. As I tell people, it's just advanced technology not being that advanced. So the issue today is parenting. Again, I'll introduce myself. I'm Jesse. Now, why do I do these videos? Because I understand that there are people who don't want to be going through life experiencing what they're experiencing and would like there to be a change. And as hard as they try, they just find themselves not necessarily accomplishing what they want to accomplish. Now, as I said yesterday, one of the things that Freud said is that adult problems are the result of unresolved childhood issues. And that's mostly true. I happen to believe that's mostly true. Even though we're trying to be this kind of, strange mental health system that takes certain things and just morphs them or puts them in some kind of strange package, and people try to live up to that, or at least follow these messages that they get from things they see on television or in books they may buy or in documentaries they may see. Two resources that I was looking into. One, I told myself, well, if I'm not going to go back to school and try to get a master's or a PhD, then I'll just buy the books and read them and see what, excuse me, see what everything that's going on. And I bought this book, and let me tell you, it's squishy, liberal. It's not even good science. It is just ironic that professionals would write a book with so much not real substance and a whole lot of touchy-feely stuff. Okay, so the discussion is in parenting. Why is parenting important when we're talking to a person about their own personal mental health status? Like I said yesterday, there's a lot of mental health experiences. There's people who are suffering from PTSD. There's people who have lost touch with reality and are in the serial killer mode. There's people with mild depression. There's a lot that's going on. And I happen to honestly believe that any person who wants to change can change, as long as they want to change. However, the road to change can be difficult if somebody is giving you misinformation. I believe it's as easy as every video I've done, every paper I've ever written. I do believe that we can change our attitude, that we can go from being negative. And I like to give examples. A form of negativity would be hopelessness, just giving up, just convincing yourself that no matter what you do, you're always going to fail. That's not true. You may have had 10 failures, you may have had 20 failures, you may have even had 100 failures, but those failures within themselves don't represent your potential. I was going to come home and tweet a message, and the message is that we are hope. We have to believe in ourselves. The message was going to be a political message because it seems that people are convinced that what they see in politicians represents there not being hope. Well, you don't look at what the politicians are doing, you look at what you're doing. And there's your hope. You believe in yourself, you believe in your neighbor, you're optimistic, you're positive, you focus on the good. And throughout this, as I said before, I'm going to keep repeating the same themes, because eventually, if you pay attention, if you stay committed to yourself, you will find that you will start to adopt a better attitude, a healthier attitude, an attitude that would actually help you existing in this society. I've seen I shouldn't admit this, but I was watching the movie Tomorrowland with what's his face, George Clooney. I didn't like it. Squishy, mushy. It's a kid movie, but the ironic thing was that the message was that the chaos in the world, throughout the world, everything that we see, murdering dictators, and everything, protest and hate and racial strife, everything that we see is because people have given up. And granted, I'm going to agree with the idea, but at the end, when they have found the solution, when they had attacked the enemy, if you will, and the enemy turned out to be a supercomputer that was transmitting negative energy back to planet Earth. Okay. But when they found the solution, it is ironic that they started promoting a whole bunch of American products like Coca-Cola. And when you see the movie, it's just so blatant. It's nothing but a promotional, a commercial propaganda for corporate America. But the idea that we have given up is correct. We do give up on ourselves. We experience life, and we do give up on ourselves. And a lot of the reasons that one of the major reasons, got to stay correct. It's important for me to do this, and it's important for me to do it in a manner that is correct. One reason that we want to be positive, we want to be optimistic, we want to have a better life, we want to have a life with fun and with pleasure. We don't want to feel the pain, we don't want to feel the suffering, we don't want to feel the angst. But no matter what we do, we find ourselves back at the same, dark corner of despair and hopelessness. One of the reasons is that a lot that happened between us and our parents or parent. In psychology, the term caregiver is used because sometimes there isn't a parent, it's a grandparent or the state, but there was an interaction, an emotional dynamic. And out of that emotional dynamic, an individual with depression, or an individual with anxiety, or an individual with anxiety and depression was formed. The perfect ideal in parenting, what most people would consider to be perfect, is that the parent is interacting with a developing child. The emotional interaction, and you'll rarely find me talking about emotions in psychology, because I'm more of a thinking person. But when you're interacting with friends, emotions are going to be exchanged, and there are rules to friendships, and if those rules are not followed, then bad things happen. So, a developing child needs intellectual information so they can learn about their environment, and they're able to maneuver themselves in that environment. And as we know, a developing child is changing, therefore their environment is changing. And as a developing child changes, the parent also has to change. And many parents don't know how to go from raising a baby to raising a toddler, or raising a preteen, or raising a teenager. In reality is we have created, I'm going to say that we have created phases in life, transitional phases. Television, mental health experts, because in reality, transitional phases are natural, they're normal, And nobody ever says, look, my kid just transitioned from being a baby to being a toddler, or my kid just transitioned from a toddler to a preteen. It's very rare that you'll hear a parent saying, because it's not obvious, you're not seeing it happen, but the child is developing. So the perfect case is it's a parent, no, it's two parents interacting with a child emotionally, spiritually, and intellectually. Children, I'm going to try not to speak a lot about God and stick to science, but we were created in a certain way with certain functions, with certain options, and functions, buttons that need to be pushed. And if those levers and buttons are not, if those levers are not pulled and those buttons are not pushed, you don't get a full human being. You don't get a person who has experienced the totality of the human experience that is going to help him or her be a person of balance. Life is going to confront us with a lot of challenges. That needs to be understood. Now, one of the teaching tools that I know is effective is to repeat things. Life is going to confront us with a lot of challenges. When I was in the public educational system, I would tell students, stop focusing on the word problem and start focusing on the word challenge. Challenge is something that you feel comfortable about attempting to accomplish. The word problem comes with a lot of negative connotations, and most people, when they hear problem, math problem, chemistry problem, algebraic formula, they start to experience fear because somebody somewhere down the road, interaction in the social dynamic made them afraid of education. And let me tell you that something that little children do very well is learn. Children want to learn. The reason they're annoying you, is not really annoying you. You're just perceiving it as annoying. But the reason they ask you a lot of questions is because they want to learn. Learning is fun. Learning is pleasurable. It's exciting. It's something that gives them joy. It even gives them peace to be involved in an educational exercise. It's just how the parent or the adult interacts with the child. See? And unfortunately, a lot of parents know how to yell. Unfortunately, a lot of parents know how to manhandle their children. It's sad that a lot of parents abuse their children. There's a lot of tragedy in the human experience. And all of it factors in. Excuse me. If you want a healthy adult who is able to cope with the challenges of life, then you need to treat them in a particular way when they are children. Yelling and screaming at a 1-year-old has no place because the 1-year-old doesn't have your vocabulary, isn't able to understand you. All they can see is your angry face, your threatening nature. The information they're processing is that they're sensing fear. Your behavior is activating their fear response, and that's bad. Talking to a child, teaching a child what you want the child to know, teaching the child what you want the child to know in a fun and entertaining manner. A lot of parents scold children for what they're not doing, but they don't teach the child what they want the child to do. Now, you may think that because you said it, the child has learned it and the child understands. Well, let me tell you that you're wrong. They may have an awareness of the words. They don't have the significance. They don't have an awareness of the significance of the words. It isn't hard to get a child to cooperate if you're actually interacting with a child. That's one of those things that you want to, keep in mind. If you're interacting with a child and it's healthy, productive interaction, quality emotional interaction, quality intellectual interaction, where the child does not feel threatened, the child is not sensing fear, of course the child's not being harmed, then the child is learning good lessons, good values. And the child will be a cooperative child. I was talking to a person that was having trouble with young children, 10 years old, 12 years old. And I told that person, well, look, the reason your child is doing what your child is doing is because you've left them alone. And when you leave a child alone, a child gets used to their own personal rhythm. And that involves coloring the walls. It involves going to the kitchen for Cheerios or whatever cereal you have in the kitchen. And when somebody comes to you and says, well, listen, your child doesn't have discipline, your child doesn't sit in their chair while they're in class, your child is disruptive, your child's not doing their work, and then you attempt to put structure in the child's life. But the only thing is that you have an independent child that has learned to manage and control his or her time. And they got their own personal little rhythm, they got their own thing going on, and here you come to put structure. The time to put structure in a child's life is when they're small. That's when you start teaching structure. That's when you start teaching limits. When I was organizing this in my mind, I don't write out outlines anymore. I don't think I have to. But when I was organizing this in my mind, there were certain, excuse me, there were certain issues that I wanted to make sure to talk about. And one of the mistakes parents make, among many, is that they don't understand that their child is not their emotional or intellectual equal. And demanding something from a child that a child doesn't know how to perform is not very productive. Now, most people want to have well-behaved children. Most people take time to attempt to teach their children values. Sometimes parents make mistakes in one, in the values that they teach, and two, in how they teach the values. Because there, you will find that if you talk to people, some of your cultural values are not shared in other cultural values. And some people are very, attached to their cultural values. And if you're teaching your child certain values, and then they interact with people of another culture, different values, they're going to consider you a troublemaker, a problem. You're not a problem, you're not a troublemaker. It's just because you have different values than they do, they are interpreting or are defining you as a problem. And it is about teaching values, but it's also teaching mental health, good mental health. There was this, I'm not talking religion, but I was listening to this Christian minister talking about how they have game night, and they have this other kind of night, and it's all to get the child, electrified, energized, awake and paying attention to the values learning. And it was so obvious that the discriminating factor wasn't the game night, wasn't the happy cartoon night. The discriminating factor was the interaction between child and parent. So basically, they could have done anything as long as it was interacting with their child. And this person believed that there needed to be games, and this person believed that there needed to be cartoons and movies for children to initiate discussion. But I'm the kind of person that believes, and I did say making lessons fun, yes, but it's like when a person told me if I thought that walking during their lunchtime in the parking lot would help them lose weight. And the answer to the question is no, because it's not structured exercise. You may lose some weight, but you're not going to lose the weight you want to lose because it's not structured exercise. Same thing with teaching values. You may get some values taught, but because it isn't structured, say, my simple, you are a comedian, you are a charismatic person. If you want to use certain objects or certain media devices, I guess that's fine. But I happen to believe in a simple conversation. Children will listen to you at the dinner table. They'll ask you questions. And if you give them honest answers, they'll respect you and they'll learn. And if you're a fun person, you're not a person who doesn't want to answer things, or a person who's always scolding the child for asking questions, then the child's not going to enjoy the learning experience. So you don't need all this, circus acts to get a child's attention. You do need, excuse me, horrible. Yesterday when I started, there was problems today. On my way home, flat tire, out in the heat, sweating. Here I am, and this thing didn't want to do what it is supposed to do, but it seems to be working, and at least today it's not going to freeze up. And I don't want to make these things long-winded, but if you have in your responsibility the care and feeding of a child, it's in your hands if that person is going to suffer from major depression, overwhelming anxiety, or that person is going to have a pleasant, enjoyable, healthy life experience. That's who you are as a parent. You're the person. See, this discussion always comes up when something happens, something major in the news media. A child takes a weapon at school and shoots classmates. Most of us who study psychology, human psychology, quickly want to know what the parent-child relationship was all about, because that's where it starts. It's not looking for someone to blame. However, it is. Excuse me. And I'll just keep coughing, but I'm going to ignore it. It is about understanding the challenge. If we want to have, a solution, we have to understand the challenge. An adult who is overwhelmed with anxiety or depression or looks at life as something ugly, doesn't want to, I remember, I was going to say, doesn't want to be here on planet Earth. I remember when Drew Barrymore in an interview said that there was a time in her life when she woke up and just in an ugly sense of life, and just like, oh, I got to go through another day again. And that is an experience for a lot of people. We're very good at being judgmental. We're very good at being the problem. And like I said yesterday, and I've said it, written it down, and said it in many different places, again, nobody wakes up and says, I want to have major depression. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to have panic attacks. Watching this video documentary, because I do like to keep my mind fresh on the issues of psychology, and it was a multiple personality disorder, which I have never had much, interest in or much validation for. I think that certain people pretend to have, personalities, because part of being sick is the attention you get from others. But I was curious, because back in the day when multiple personality disorder used to be discussed in the 70s, in the 80s, maybe the early 90s, there wasn't that much attention about getting to the, understanding why. And in this video documentary, and it had its years, I'm going to say it's probably 20 years old, they did a good job of getting to that why. Now you got to hang with it, 15, 20 minutes into the video documentary, when they actually pinpoint the reason for it. But as I was watching, it was obvious to me that what we were talking about here was psychosis due to overwhelming pain from stress factors, and that resulted in this individual's multiple personality dynamic, the personality dynamic. Um, and almost, well, the people that they were working with had been physically and sexually abused as children. And these personalities manifested in order to deal with the pain and suffering. And like I've said, there are the totality of mental health issues do not, come from every person who has mental health issues isn't a person who was abused as a child. There are a lot of people who were abused as children, and some of us would actually think that scolding a child with a loud voice is an abuse. There's a simple rule that I use. If you're causing fear, anxiety, that's what anxiety is fear. We're afraid of something we just don't want to admit. I'm going to say this again. I was having a conversation with a person, and the conversation led to psychology, and they started asking me questions about things that they are experiencing. And I told them, look, let's put it in simple terms. Anxiety is fear. If you have anxiety, then you're afraid of something. Figure out what you're afraid of, and you'll no longer have anxiety. Yes, I am pausing for effect, because the person got upset. The person got upset that I would dare to suggest that they're afraid of something. Let me say this again. Anxiety is fear. If you have anxiety, you're afraid of something. Figure out what you're afraid of, and you'll no longer have anxiety. There are things that we think cannot control. Now, on the parenting issue, and again, I believe in repeating things, reinforcing issues. I hope you got the message that as a parent, you have a great responsibility to educate your child in emotional terms, to educate your child in intellectual terms, to educate your child in spiritual terms, even biological terms. What is a good nutrition? The children are not pets. Children are not just there in our close proximity, and as long as we can look over and both arms are still there and an eye hasn't been gouged out, they're okay. No. You actually have to interact with the child. You, the parent, has to interact with the child. Sometimes the child gets along better with an aunt and an uncle. It's because they actually interact with them. The aunt and the uncle don't have an attitude towards the child. There's a lot of reasons why a parent would ignore the child. There's a lot of reasons why a parent would yell irrationally at a child. It's counterproductive, it's unhealthy, it's toxic, it's poison. Again, my rule is if you're if you're activating anxiety in a child, as far as I'm concerned, it's child abuse. No parent is perfect, and some parents are going to make mistakes. So the child may, experience anxiety. The child may wake up and see a shadow on the wall and become scared that there's a monster in the room. Okay, there is no perfect situation. But I'm talking about parents who ignore their children, parents who don't talk to their children, or parents who yell at their children, manhandle their children, parents who don't have a structured daily routine. You have to sit down, and I talk a lot about 24-hour cycles. A day is what basically I'm talking about. But when I talk about a day, most people think about, waking up at 7, going to sleep at 11. And we live in a 24-hour society, and for a lot of people, that's just not their own personal reality. So I talk about a 24-hour cycle. You need to schedule your child's 24-hour cycle. Between these hours, the child will be asleep. Between these hours, the child will be awake. When the child wakes up, the child will be fed this, something good, something nutritious. As I am awake with the child, I'll be interacting in a pleasant, entertaining manner. I will try to respect the child, and if the child has questions, I will give an age-appropriate answer, and the child's going to be bathed, and the child's going to go to school, and the child's going to have clean clothes, and the child's going to have good shoes, and I'm going to encourage my child to talk to me if something happens in the classroom, something happens with students at the school. I want my child to talk to me. I'm not going to scold the child. You know, the child, my 10-year-old child says, somebody gave me a cigarette at lunchtime and I smoked. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm just going to remain calm and teach, you know, the reasons why smoking is a bad idea. So you need to be an involved, engaged parent. You need to structure your child's day. In that day, of course, it needs to be fun. You know, I don't know how much television fun. I don't know how much media fun. Personally, I would tell you to, you know, replace books with television or replace television with books. Cartoons are funny. I don't have a problem with cartoons. There's this big foolishness about how Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck were violent. No, they were not. All of us saw Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and Elmer Fudd and Foghorn Leghorn and, you know, can't think of the rest. Porky Pig. All of us saw it, and we didn't turn out to be serial killers. We weren't bashing our classmates with hammers or looking at, you know, or mimicking the behaviors that we saw in cartoons. I mean, that's just a foolish nonsense. But yes, there needs to be fun. There needs to be play, sports. You know, I still don't get Duck Dynasty, but they do, you know, engage in family interaction, and the adults, when they're interacting with their children, they're involving them in new experiences, so the child gains confidence. You know, you want to go to the mountains, you want to go canoeing, you want to go fishing, you know, go to the museum, you know, maybe a summer community college course, you know, guitars for children, you know, boost the child's self-esteem and the child's intellectual awareness, so they have enough information, and when they become adults and start confronting life, they're able to deal with life in a competent manner. Will everything be beautiful? No. Will there be hearts broken? Of course. Will they lose jobs if they thought they were the perfect job? Yes, that's going to happen. There are other greater realities that none of us can change and none of us can do anything about, and we must accept. The only thing we can do is accept them, but accept them in a healthy manner. You know, is usually when problems manifest themselves: alcoholism, drugs, truancy, talking back. I'm gonna go ahead and state that there's just some people who should have never, ever been allowed to have children. But here we are today. These children exist, and I do feel a personal responsibility in trying to reduce the amount of mental health illness in the world. I don't think that I'm a god. I don't think that I'm a superhero. When I was watching those superhero movies, the last one that came out, is it the Avengers? Whatever it is, where all those superheroes get together, Military Man and Faraway Outer Space Man, or whatever it was, Thor, I think. I mean, that movie was just going down a very strange road of dialogue. But there was a time there when one of the newbies, new superheroes, you know, asked arrow flinging man, says, "Well, why do you do it?" And the person said, "Because I'm a superhero and it's my job." Yeah, I'm gonna be cynical and sarcastic. If you're a superhero, I don't know how much of your job it is. Maybe you feel a moral obligation to be involved, but I don't think it's your job. Either way, I don't think I'm a superhero. I don't think I'm a god trying to save the world. I know that what I have meditated on and what I've written in articles and what video essays that I have done, I know that the philosophy that I have honed And I'm going to give credit where credit is due. All of this stuff we know. We know about being positive. We know about being optimistic. We know about being realistic. And again, by being realistic, I mean enjoying what we have and being grateful for it. We know about looking for what's good in life. We know about simple, healthy pleasures of life, like music and literature and friends and family members. We know about working to have peace, love, and joy. I can tell you that if you're a person who's struggling with your emotional self, with your pain and suffering, I can tell you that you can start changing your attitude. Start believing in yourself. Start believing that there is an answer. And there is a day where you will be free of pain and suffering. And that has to do with changing your belief system, what you think. There was he's still alive, Christian minister, and I was watching him. I watch Christian television. Again, I'm not going to preach religion, even though there would be nothing wrong if you were to pursue getting to know Jesus Christ. But I was listening to this minister, and he's he's giving his lesson, and then he at the end he says, "I want you to focus." He's talking to the audience. He says, "I want you to focus on your pain and your suffering, and how every day you don't want to be that way. And even though you don't want to admit it, that's your reality." And as this minister, who I have a lot of respect for, I don't insult television evangelists as other people do. As he was talking, I was like thinking to myself, well, Pastor, maybe 10 years ago, yes. From that, when I was watching that program, I was thinking to myself, yeah, 10 years ago, yes. A lot of pain, a lot of suffering. But today, no. Life doesn't stop. Life's never going to stop. You and I are going to move through this world. And it's up to us what kind of a voyage we have. It's even up to us what kind of legacy we will leave behind. I can't remember where it was that I heard it, but oh yeah, it's 3 years ago maybe. Some children wrote their mother's eulogy, and I'm going to paraphrase. They basically said, "We're glad you're dead. You've caused us so much pain, so much suffering. You've hurt so many people, that now that you've passed, it's a relief for so many." I'm pretty sure that person didn't get that much from their parents. The person who died and was spoken of in that manner by her children. And all she did was pass on to her children what was given to her. I don't respect criminals. I think that prison is exactly where they belong, where they can't harm anybody else. But ironically, they find people to harm in prison. They just harm other prisoners. However, I have a healthy respect for all people who are suffering. I have a healthy respect for all people who are in pain. And it does bug me. It bugs me that being positive and optimistic and being realistic and organizing your life and setting some dreams and some goals and some objectives and working at things that you can accomplish, that you can manage, to build your self-esteem, to build your confidence, to love yourself, to say, okay, there is pain and suffering in my life, but I'm not going to complicate it with my negative inner voice and attacking myself with a whole bunch of negative messages. I'm not going to rob myself of positive energy. I'm not going to rob myself of inspiration. I'm going to be realistic. I'm going to do what I'm able to do. And in my day, instead of lamenting my existence, I'm going to look for things in my 24-hour cycle that will give me peace, love, and joy. Healthy things. Right now, I shouldn't include this in a discussion about parenting, but right now, just less than 5 seconds ago, somebody took their life. If we look at it, statistics for what statistics are, somebody's getting raped right now. A lot of children are being sexually abused right now. It's a lot of tragedy, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. And they're going to come to a realization as adults that life just isn't worth it. And even though we may believe, we don't have it in us to be a basic parent, much less to be a super parent, we got to step up and not abuse these children, not scare them, not frighten them with our loud voice, not mistreat them, not manhandle them. I don't know, 2 weeks was their blanket. That's it. That's all she wanted. Oh. Okay, so I'm gonna have to cut this some way because it stopped recording. I didn't stop it recording.